Hi there guys! As we've seen over the last few videos, the Nazis did everything they could to try to control the thoughts and actions of the German people, through propaganda and censorship, through control of religious organisations, and through the terror of the police state. On the whole, the Germans did at the very least conform with the Nazis' rules and ideals, but it could be argued that there was significant support for the Nazis. In 1932, Hitler had 36% of the vote in the presidential election and 38% of the votes in the July Reichstag elections. This proves that around 40% of the German people did support the Nazis, at the least in the beginning. Many Germans continued to support the Nazis throughout the 1930s, partly because of the success of propaganda and censorship in controlling what the people learned about the Nazis, but also because of some of the Nazi policies had been very successful. The Nazis, for example, appeared to have almost eradicated unemployment, although as you will see in my forthcoming video on Nazi policies, this may not have been the case. They'd also built up the army and won several foreign policy successes. However, not everyone in Nazi Germany was happy. There were oppositions from various groups, which when discovered were dealt with harshly. One group that opposed the Nazis were members of the army. An example of this is General Ludwig Beck. He was a senior member of the army and in 1938 tried to get the army to arrest Hitler and sent a message to the British promising the German army wouldn't fight back if the British attacked. He was unsuccessful in both these plots and later, during the war, attempted to assassinate Hitler on 2 occasions. Another important group providing opposition were those who had once belonged to the now banned trade unions. These workers would try to undermine the Nazis by calling in sick or working slowly on major projects. But the effect of this was limited. There was some political opposition, especially from the former SPD. They produced an opposition newspaper called the Red Shock Troop, which sold around 3,000 copies. However, the organisers were arrested and sent to concentration camps. The SPD did continue to campaign against the Nazis from abroad, setting up the SOPADE, which shared information with foreign nations about the Nazis. There are lots of examples of individuals and small groups who opposed the Nazis, usually in small ways like producing leaflets or writing graffiti, but some spied on behalf of the communists or the Western powers. There are 2 main groups of opposition that you need to know about in detail for your exam. One is religious opposition, which I talked about in my last video, and the other is opposition from the youth of Germany. Most of you will know that the Nazis tried to control the actions and education of the young through the Hitler Youth for boys and the League of German Maidens for girls. In 1936, membership of these organisations became compulsory, and most young people conformed to the expectations. However, a small number of German young people rebelled against the expectations of self-sacrifice and devotion to the Nazi state. The 2 key groups you need to know about are the Edelweiss Pirates and the Swing Youth. The Edelweiss Pirates were mainly made up of working-class young people. They were mainly boys, but there were also girls, and they hated the military discipline of the Hitler Youth and the lack of freedom that the Nazis allowed. The boys grew their hair and wore American-style clothing. Girls too adopted American-style dresses and white socks. The groups weren't really organised. Each area had their own version, with the teenagers from Essen calling themselves the Travelling Dudes, and those from Cologne calling themselves the Navajos. They would hang around on street corners, taunt or beat up Hitler Youth members, and went on hikes to get away from the adults. They would sing parodies of Hitler Youth songs and told jokes which mocked Hitler and the Nazis. The Swing Youth, in contrast, were mainly white, middle-class teenagers. However, they too enjoyed American culture and fashion, and particularly the music. They would play illegally imported music on record players and particularly enjoyed swing music such as that of the Glenn Miller Orchestra. They danced forbidden dances such as the jitterbug and smoked and drank against the rules for young people. It is estimated that around 6,000 young people considered themselves members of the Swing Youth. Not all of them liked swing. There were some who preferred jazz, which was popularised by black singers such as Louis Armstrong. These kids called themselves the Jazz Youth, but the Nazis absolutely hated jazz more than swing because of its connections with black Americans. The opposition provided by these groups, however, was limited. The groups were only focused on opposing the rules for young people and rarely did any speak out about wider issues. The numbers involved were also small. Around 2,000 young people joined the Edelweiss Pirates, while membership of the Hitler Youth in 1938 was around 8 million. The Nazis were never really challenged by their groups, and it wasn't until the outbreak of World War II that the youth groups began to make physical attacks against the Nazis. In reality, with such small numbers and with their focus on challenging the culture rather than the politics, these groups were never a threat to the Nazis. Okay, that is everything you need to know about opposition and resistance to the Nazis. Don't forget to check out my website for worksheets and revision guidance. I will see you next time.